if they want to. Don't bother me.
And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Marie Musi.
And welcome to our guest, Sally Clayton, who's a staffer with the Crime Victims Treatment Center at St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital. And we're here to talk about the fact that this month is also tell us exactly the name of the month.
Well, this month is Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Yes.
And this coming weekend is and I can see on your poster there, the 22nd Annual Crime Victims Candlelight Vigil. And we're here to talk about the work of the Crime Victims Treatment Center, its history, its good work, its sort of national standing and international standing as an important institution that deals with this very crucial issue of our time, as the headlines have been screaming for the last few weeks alone. And
also about some events coming up
right. Right. And the fact that this is the 30th anniversary this year, this month, I guess.
For the center, yes.
For the center itself.
Oh, okay.
30 years you've been doing this work.
Mm-hmm.
And also, of course, we're live as usual. This is Let Them Talk, and you can ask questions by calling the number below, 212-757-1538, and we'll take your calls and involve the viewers in this program. That's what we love to do, and we will be doing. Sally, 30 years the Crime Victims Treatment Center has been doing its work, and maybe you could begin by telling us how and why 30 years ago a center like this was formed or had to be formed.
Well, what happened was the center really started as a result of a rape that occurred at Columbia University in 1977. And what happened was the victim was brought to St. Luke's Hospital. And there wasn't really a procedure in place. There wasn't a protocol for sexual assault. Nobody really knew how to handle and give proper treatment to this patient.
As late as 1977?
1977, yeah.
It wasn't as if sexual assault was something that was discovered in 1977.
No, I know, but then it makes you wonder about all of the people who had been sexually assaulted who never made it to a hospital.
That's right.
Yeah.
What happened before that? What was it about this incident, this rape that happened on the Columbia University campus or nearby the Columbia University campus, that sparked this movement? Was it a movement of the era? It was the 70s. It was a time of the feminist movement was strong.
Right. Well, that was part of it. And it was people from the community, and it was also some hospital staff. Our director, who's the director of our program now, Susan Zanarios, was the social worker in the emergency department at that time. And so together with members of the community, hospital staff, some physicians who were on staff, and other people who were concerned about this issue, the program started sort of just as a grassroots kind of a program. And we've just grown from there to be the probably largest hospital-based rape crisis program.
Now, when did you become associated with the hospital? Was that from the beginning? Or?
We were always part of the hospital.
Okay.
Although we receive financial support, our program is funded by outside sources. There's some hospital support. Of course, we have space at the hospital, but our funders are the New York State Crime Victims Board and the Department of Health and other funders.
How do you operate? Tell us what happens when a person shows up at the emergency room at St. Luke's or any, could be Roosevelt Hospital right here. We're just down the block from a huge hospital. When somebody comes into the emergency room and the people in the emergency rooms think they have a sexual assault, what happens? And how are you drawn into it, and other groups like yours drawn into it?
Yeah, well, what happens is because as I told you from the beginning, the community was involved in the response to what happened with this young woman in 1977, and the community has remained a very important part of our program. We have a large volunteer advocate program where we have over 100 volunteers who are members of the community who act as volunteer crisis counselors, and they're on call 24 hours a day. Well, actually, they're on call during the week, for the night hours from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and then 24 hours on the weekends. So whenever a sexual assault victim or a domestic violence victim comes into either emergency room, the advocate is called, the volunteer advocate is called, and that person comes and stays with the patient throughout their whole experience in the emergency department. And it's such an important part of of the services that we
And
provide.
these people are trained to
They're
deal with
trained by
someone in
us.
this circumstance.
Absolutely, they're trained. It's a 40-hour training, and we conduct training actually once every year. So if there's anybody in the community who's listening to this program who's interested in being a volunteer with our program, we would love to have them contact us.
And what is the contact information? For
Well, they can go to our website, which is www.cvtc-slr.org. So that's CVTC as in Crime Victims Treatment Center, and it's a hyphen, and then it's SLR as in St. Luke's Roosevelt.org.
Okay.
And there'll be information there. If it isn't there now, it will be there soon for the training that we're going to be doing in the fall.
Now, are most of your volunteers women, or do you have men and
Oh, we have
women?
male volunteers
You
as
do.
well. Yes.
And are most of your clients women?
Most of our clients are women, but we have male clients as well. And in fact, we've just recently expanded services to male survivors.
That's interesting. Tell us a little bit about that project, because I know Ramel works on that project.
Exactly.
And you're actually dealing with men victims and as well as folks in prison and that kind of situation as well, or
Not necessarily
the
folks in
prisoners
prison.
rape movement. I know
Oh, okay.
I've
well,
read about it and heard about it. I was wondering if that was connected, but this is actual men who have been sexually abused in their homes, raped or whatever, usually by other men, or it could be by women as well, or
It could be by women, but usually it's by men.
right. And that's interesting. How big of a problem is that? It's a little bit off the subject, but it's fascinating to me because it's never talked about.
I know, it really isn't. Well, what would your guess be in terms of percentage? Of the sexual assaults that come into the emergency room, what percentage do you think are men? I'm just interested in knowing what you would guess.
I don't know.
I'll guess 5%.
I'll
Five.
say 10%.
Well, it was 14.
14%. 14%.
And interestingly enough, our volunteer advocates, that's about the same ratio, male to female, that we have of
Isn't
volunteers.
that interesting?
And that's just the way they came to us. But I must say also that, the male volunteer advocates that we have, they work with female patients as well. Our program is gender neutral in that respect.
Let me ask you something else about the clientele. Is this exclusively for New York City residents or Upper West Side residents, or?
No, we provide services to anyone, but about half of our referrals are people who come in through the ED, through the emergency department.
Okay.
The rest of our referrals are just people who call. I mean, of course, logistically, it has to make sense for them if they're going to come in to us for treatment, because we offer counseling and other services, that they have to be able to come on a weekly basis or whatever it is.
Right.
And is this paid for by the person's health insurance, or do they have to pay?
Well, the beauty of it is that it's free of charge.
Oh, it's free?
Yes, it's
Oh,
free of
that's
charge
wonderful.
to victims, and because of the funding that we receive through the New York State Crime Victims Board and the New York State Department of Health and the Scaife Family Foundation.
And you don't have then geographical requirements other
No.
than the convenience of the client?
Right, right.
It's very
And also
interesting.
that the expansion of the mail program, which is how Ramel
Sure.
came to work with us, was because of a grant that we received from the City Council to expand services for men.
So the city council recognized that there was a problem there.
Yes, that this is an underserved population.
Right. Tell us a little bit about what happens when somebody comes in. I mean, they come in, they're scared, they're crying, they're injured. What do you say to a person under those circumstances? How do you reach out to a person who's just been
Traumatized,
raped, traumatized by a rape? Just right then, as in the emergency room, is obviously in pain.
Well, I guess the best way to answer that is that you take your cues from the patient, and if you're able to listen closely enough and observe closely enough, the person will tell you, whether it's verbally or in some other way, what it is that they need. And it may be that they need just for someone to be sitting there,
Just the presence.
or they may need for somebody to be sitting outside the room. So what you do is you leave when you're the advocate or the volunteer, you leave your ego outside the door and just be there for that person in whatever capacity they need for you to be there.
Do you at any point bring in the police or work with the police?
We do work with the police, because if the survivor chooses to report the crime to the police, because I don't know if you're aware, but sexual assault is not a mandated report.
Oh, really?
Once someone has been sexually assaulted, it's their decision whether or not they actually report the crime.
So
As
they not
opposed
know
to like
that.
abusing a child or something like that. You know,
Right.
I've been a teacher and you're told, you know, you must report this if you
Exactly.
suspect it. But if it's sexual assault of an adult, it's up to them.
Right, and domestic violence as well,
I
unless
see.
there's a weapon used.
Uh-huh.
Now, what is your job with, what do you do on the staff there? Do you train people, or are you a nurse?
Well, all of us on the staff take part in the training.
Okay.
We all, do parts of it, based on whatever it is that we sort. Everybody on staff sort of specializes in one area or another, and most of the therapists who work at the center are social workers, MSW, LCSWs or MSWs. I am not a social worker. I'm the complementary therapist, so I do alternative therapies with the clients.
And tell me something about the alternative therapies.
Things like guided imagery, meditation, shamanic journey work. My training is
Right.
just shamanic in nature.
And do you try and deal with the pain of the immediate incident, or do you find like the deeper things going on in a person's life?
It depends on sort of where they are in the
I
process
see.
and what they need. Everybody's treatment is different
Right.
based on whatever it is that
Sure.
they need.
Because I'm thinking one day you could have, a homeless woman who was abused in the street, who was living in a box, and the next day you could have someone from a penthouse apartment on the Upper West Side. So it's very different backgrounds, very different ways, I imagine, you would
Sure.
approach people under those different circumstances.
Right, and the way people react to or their responses to what has happened to them can be very different and can manifest in different ways.
Right. How far has society come? Not to ask your opinion directly, but we just had the Duke case, for example. I don't know if that's helped or hurt the case, because you have a situation where, these kids were exonerated, yet still, despite the fact they were exonerated, obviously, has this hurt the movement, the fact that the prosecutors seem to have gone overboard on this, trying to curry favor? That's at least what some folks are saying. Or what do you think happened there?
I don't know that I wouldn't say that it's really hurt the movement. I think it's hurt the reputation of the district attorney who was found to have, mishandled the case. And I certainly, we were actually talking about this in the office yesterday, that, these young men's lives, I mean, if you Google them 50 years from now,
Right.
that's what you're going to see.
Duke rape case, right?
Exactly, and the evidence has clearly been shown, the DNA evidence that was collected, that they were in fact innocent.
Right.
And so what we're talking about is that, justice should be available to all,
Right.
and that, for them, it's hard.
Right.
They're in a very difficult
And
situation.
individual cases are different, what happens and whether the accusation is true or not.
Yeah.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about some of the events coming up?
Oh, I wanted to tell you one other thing about
Sure.
the program, because
Yes.
we're going through the history, and it started originally as a rape crisis program, right? But then, later on, several years later, we started working with survivors of domestic violence. And our program began giving female survivors of domestic violence from the community who had received services with us, began working as domestic violence advocates and being paid a stipend, so that they could then, many of them had no work experience at all, had been in abusive relationships for years, so this was a way for them to enter the workforce and to have references and be able to get jobs and rebuild their lives.
I see.
So that's how it started. But then now it's evolved into a very different sort of setup, where all of the advocates are trained for both rape and domestic violence, and the advocates are not necessarily survivors themselves.
Have you had any problems at your office? I mean, I know that a lot of, when I was in college, I remember the Rape Crisis Center there in the late 70s, probably modeled on yours. I was at the University of Wisconsin.
Oh, really?
Was secretive. I mean, you didn't know where they put people, and they had a whole network of safe houses, basically, to protect people from abusive
Or
situations.
people who are leaving an abusive
So do you have any situation where, like, a boyfriend or, a boyfriend of a girl or a guy, or for that matter, a crazy girlfriend?
Well, we don't have a shelter ourselves
see,
that
right.
we run.
So they don't come banging on your door saying...
Well, our door is
"Where?"
locked.
I see. You never had that problem? Have you ever had that problem?
Not since I've been there.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear it. But, it's a question people have, because I know, look what just happened I think it might be, in a sense, another sexual abuse case. What happened yesterday in Virginia is adding up to boyfriend
Oh yeah, I
murdering
don't know
his.
what the whole.
Yeah,
We don't know what the whole.
we don't know
story
what the whole
with that
story is. They're sort of
Yeah.
selling it that as a little bit, and sure, there's been plenty of cases of guys going off the deep end in that way. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, so then after the domestic violence part of our program started, we started then, I guess it's going to be almost 10 years that we've had a sexual assault forensic examiner program where we organize, well, we don't organize it, we arrange for nurses, doctors, or physician assistants to receive special training to do forensic exams and to do the rape kit. So we have a team of professionals who provide these services as well. And part of my job also is that I do some of the administrative work around the
Tell us a little bit,
safe
what do you mean
program.
by the rape kit? And by the way, I just want to say our guest is Sally Clayton, a staffer with the Crime Victims Treatment Center at St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital, celebrating their 30th year intervening and helping victims of sexual abuse and rape in the streets of New York, and setting up a pattern that's really been copied all over the United States, and probably around the world. And we're here live in the studio, and our number is below, 212-757-1538. If you have any questions, if you've been a victim of sexual abuse or rape and want to talk about your experience, or if you know someone who has, feel free to call. We want to hear about your experience and talk more. This month is Sexual Violence Awareness Month that we're in at this time. And yes, tell us. That was an interesting line of conversation. I'd like you to
About the SAFE program?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tell
it
us a little
really
bit
is,
about
because
that.
it's such a wonderful service that we're able to
Yes.
provide to victims of sexual assault. These professionals are committed to provide the best possible care to survivors of sexual assault, and also to be proficient in collecting the forensic evidence that's necessary
Right.
should the survivor decide that they wish to pursue a criminal
So
justice.
when you say
action.
forensic evidence, you mean the evidence that the assault took place. So in other words,
Well, in a sexual assault, the crime scene is the body.
right.
So what they're doing is they're collecting evidence that is on the body or on the clothing.
What's a rape kit? Explain that to folks.
A rape kit is a prepackaged, it's a box of several envelopes that contain markings for swabs that are taken from different parts of the body, the inside of the mouth, or areas on the body that get swabbed. And those swabs are collected and then examined by the medical examiner's office for DNA.
And there you have DNA. Very interesting. So is DNA the main evidence that's used to get people nowadays? Is that
DNA is such powerful evidence, yes.
Is that the main evidence that's used to get people, not the term I'm using, establish guilt and prosecute people?
cases.
Yes.
Well, it's the most solid evidence that I think that we have.
Right. Once they have somebody's DNA and it's not supposed to be there, then that person is definitely.
And now you're
possibly-
dealing with somebody who's been severely traumatized, and now this sort of very practical thing has to be done. So that's the reason for training people, is to do it in a way that doesn't further traumatize the
Exactly.
client.
Oh yeah, that's very good that you would that you would see it from that perspective, because that's right. It is it's quite an involved exam, but these people know how to conduct the exam in such a way that rather than continuing the traumatization of the person, it really does begin the healing process, because even right from the beginning, the sense of power and control that was taken away from the victim during the assault is given back to the person. And they have the right to accept or decline any part of the exam. They can stop at any point. It's their decision whether they call the police. If somebody comes into the emergency room for treatment, they're not going to be forced to report the crime. And I think that's important for people to know, because we don't want people not to seek medical attention or help, for fear that
Simply
they're going to be
because,
forced
yeah.
into doing things that they don't wish to do.
I see.
So,
Now, a number of years ago, there was a problem in New York State with a number of thousands of these rape kits in a backlog up in
Yes.
Albany in a
Right.
basement
It hadn't been
somewhere.
processed.
They hadn't even processed them. Has that gotten better?
yes, that has been, they've gone through
They've
all of
eliminated
them,
all
I
those.
believe, yes.
Yeah. And has that actually led to prosecutions and arrests?
Oh, I'm sure it has, because what has happened is because there are so many more kits that were processed, and now with the collecting of evidence of offenders who've been convicted of certain crimes,
Sure.
felonies for sure, and violent crimes,
Yeah.
where they have to give a DNA sample when they're incarcerated. We've gotten a lot of what you call cold hits, where DNA from a
They
kit
match, yeah.
will match somebody who's already either in prison or has been in prison for another
Is there,
crime.
one more question leading to that, is there a statute of limitations on rape in New York City, in New York State? In other words, if somebody hasn't been caught for 7 years, do they have a free pass?
Yes, I should know that answer right off the top of my head, but
I believe it's true.
I know that there is,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure what it is.
Right, some
Now,
number
what
of years.
percentage of victims do you think do choose to prosecute? Do you have statistics on that, or?
I don't have a sense of what that is.
How about your personal sense when you work with folks? Are they often, I want to get this guy, or is it more like,
I want to forget this
I want
ever
to forget this
happened?
ever happened?
That's hard to answer, because the beauty of it is that these kits that we spoke about, they can actually be held by the hospital
Oh, I see.
for up to 1 year,
Oh,
so that
the person has some cushion in terms of.
they have a year window in which to decide. So
And the police just can't come in and seize evidence? They can't say this is evidence of a crime and just take it out here?
Well,
That's interesting to me.
they may not know. They wouldn't know.
Uh-huh.
How would
Right,
they
if it
even
hadn't
know
been
that if they haven't
reported.
been called?
Right, I see.
No, they're not going
I
to
find that
seize
interesting.
evidence.
I see, right.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me, because they're tough on other subjects, they'll definitely go after it, but that's interesting that they don't. I find that interesting because what it's relating, in my head, it seems that this has never been treated until recently, and I'm even wondering if recently it's a serious, society looks at this kind of thing as really that serious. I mean, maybe it is more now, but it seems historically people have gotten away with this kind of thing for years and years and years. There seems to be a sea change now in attitudes. But this is, as you say, your service itself is 30 years old, and we know that, obviously people have been raped for thousands of years, at all. So is there some sort of change in the public's attitude? Are they coming around and saying that, this violent treatment of women is not acceptable, or it's not something that's left in the family, or it's not something that's a shame not to be talked about, like you shouldn't have been dressed that way? And you've heard those kind of things.
Things are changing. I think they
Yeah.
are. They are. Yes, I think that. Yes,
You don't have to feel
society
so
is
quick
no
to say,
longer,
oh, you brought it on yourself because the way you dressed, or where you hung out, or you shouldn't have been there, or you were a stripper, or you were on the street.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was really interesting on the website. There's a page where it says no means no, and then there's a list of all.
Where was that?
On the website.
Uh-huh.
There's it's just one page. I clicked on it because I saw it said no says no, no means no, and it listed a whole sort of
Like a scenario.
array of things like what Paul's just saying of that no means no even if the person has on a mini skirt.
Oh,
No
yes.
means no even if the person changed their mind. I mean, it's really an interesting list that.
And you know what? No means no also, even if you're not able to say no.
Uh-huh.
In
Like
the
putting your
cases
hands
of,
up and saying like this.
Well, in the case of a drug-facilitated sexual assault.
That's
I
right,
see.
Which is
where the
also a
person's
crime.
unconscious,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's also a crime.
That's right.
Just because somebody can't say no doesn't mean
mean
they wouldn't
you
say
just
no
get
if they
to,
had the
right.
Right.
What is it? That's interesting. We've heard of this GHB, the date rape drug. Is this a common thing, or I've always wondered if this is just the anti-drug mentality going crazy. I mean, is
Well,
this really
the drugs change.
Yeah,
They're
right.
different.
What
But,
they
but the
use,
biggest
yeah.
rape drug is alcohol.
I was just going to ask
Yeah.
about
Alcohol
that.
is the
Drinking,
biggest
yeah.
one, right?
Yeah, and one of the other things that's happened as a result of, no smoking in bars is that, people who do smoke may leave their drink on a bar and then go outside for a cigarette.
That's right.
And in the meantime,
Bad
somebody
idea.
can slip something in your drink.
That I can
so
tell you is
That's
a
right.
bad idea.
It's a very bad idea.
Never leave your drink. Drink it all or throw it out, but don't pick it up after you left it. You never know.
That's
There's
right.
so many things out there, so many chemicals you don't even know what they are
Right.
floating around. There's somebody made in their bathtub, and I know there's people who do that. So be careful.
Yeah.
And but alcohol is the worst one in the sense of that. I mean, because you just apply somebody with booze until they're falling down drunk, and then take advantage of them.
Right, but that's still raping someone.
How does it become rape? When does it become rape in the eyes of the law, or when it gets presented
If
to you
someone
guys?
is not capable of consenting
Right.
to
But they have to make the complaint. So if they have passed out on coldly unconscious and don't know,
right.
there might never be a case or a report.
There might not be, but there might be also,
Right.
because there may be evidence that
Right.
something occurred that was not
I
something
see.
they wished to happen.
Right.
And, you know, that's where forensic
Interesting.
evidence is very important.
So do people come, that's interesting to me, do people come to the emergency room saying, you know, I woke up and I think something weird happened?
Absolutely.
Oh,
that
sure,
happens quite
yeah.
frequently.
That's interesting. Again, well, we have a couple minutes left.
Well, yeah, let's
Sally
talk
Clayton,
about some of
yeah,
the...
I want
let's
to show
talk
folks
about
this
these.
poster. Yeah, we have a couple minutes
It's
left.
the candlelight vigil.
Here's the candlelight vigil. Tell us about this.
This is the 22nd annual vigil, where it's a lovely service that's held at the West Side Collegiate Church on 77th Street in West End. We invite anyone to come who recognizes the importance of these issues and wishes to support victims and their families. And then, so, I mean, it's so great to be doing this, you know, now with it being Sexual Assault Awareness Month. There's so many things that
Right.
are happening.
Right, and let me show this
This
poster
is
here.
from Columbia. Columbia
Okay, this is-
University put this out.
Oh, this is what they're doing up on the Upper
And
West
then on
Side
the
for all the
19th, we've
folks up
got
there.
Take Back the Night.
Take
Yeah.
Back the Night is
Right,
That's
and-
April 19th, which is this Thursday. And where is that taking place?
That takes place, where is that? I guess it's on the campus.
On the campus.
Yeah, it is on the
Mhm,
campus.
Columbia University campus is doing
It's
the
one
Take
of the
Back
largest
the Night.
student-run events on campus.
Right,
And what is the say-so on the 20th?
The Say-So is Friday. It's held at Union Square, and this is organized by the New York City Alliance Against Sexual Assault, which is the sort of the
So that's
program
Friday
that
in Union
works
Square.
with all of the programs across the city and sort of deals with programmatic issues that affect all of us.
And that's all day, 10 to 10 in Union Square. So
Right.
Yeah.
And what is your webpage one more time?
Our website is www.cvtc, as in Crime Victims Treatment Center, -slr.org.
Okay.
great.
And well, thank you, Sally Clayton, for joining us
Thank
on
you
Let
so
Them
much.
Talk.
Yeah,
It's
we
a
really
And it was
appreciate
very
your coming.
informative, and we learned quite a lot about some new subject matter that we might not have known so much about before. So we'll see you next week. What do we have for next week, Joni?
Same-sex dance competition, the 5-borough challenge.
Live here in the
That's
studio.
right.
Same-sex dance competition.
We're going to have
live
demonstrations and
here. So,
everything.
turn away from what's that show you guys like to watch about the dancing?
Dancing with the Stars.
Dancing with
You
the
don't have to watch
Stars.
Dancing with the Stars. Tune in here and watch the real Dancing with the Stars. All right, we'll
good
see you
night.
next week. Thanks a lot. Good night.
Thank you.